is actually divided in three phases. The first part we will cover about feasibility study. The second one we will do preliminary design, which is actually a part of a feasibility. And then at the end, in the last 4 weeks, after 10 or 11 weeks, then we will come up with how we can apply the environmental impact assessment. So the subject is originally focusing on railway, but I will mainly focusing on, so like we will take four different cases, one from road, one from railway, one from marine tran, and another one from the airport. So then those last four sessions will be very conclusive, like I will share a few reports, and then you, each and every participant need to come up with his own presentation, with his own idea, etc. So today the first 2 or 3 sessions will be mainly focusing on feasibility study. Izaz, do you have any idea about what is the purpose of feasibility study? Any idea? Is you are working already in the field, so I hope you have already idea about that, and I'm quite sure that you have already done few of the feasibility study as well.
Sir, to predetermine the scenario of what will be happening in future of the project. For example, if we are going to do a project about a railway, just like from Peshawar to Mardan, so we will predetermine all the factors which will be considered in the project, starting from the topography, the economics, the business point of view, and who will be affected, and what will be the stakeholders.
Very good, sir. Very good. Actually, most of the project failure reason is because we sometimes ignore feasibility study, or there is some such type of issues within feasibility, because the team which you usually send to the field, they are not expert in the collection of the data. So this is a very basic reason each and everyone need to keep that in mind. So the purpose of feasibility is not to go on the basis of assumption, because when we talk about engineering projects or railway or like any of the four modes project, so there is no place for assumption. You don't need to think, you only need to react and collect the data from the field. On the basis of those collections and the available data, you can decide either the project is viable or not. So in this very first definition, we have learned three things: that we cannot assume the data, and we are looking for facts and figure, which we only can collect from the field. And in the very third one is that the majority failure in any type of a project is only because of the issues in the feasibility study, or the team which we send to collect the data, they are not expert in their domain. I hope, Azaz, you have a very clear idea that what we will talk about, right?
Yes, sir.
Moving on, in this lecture, we will talk about what are the key factors. And the very second important thing is that why we actually need feasibility study. For example, so the first question was that what is feasibility? But the question is that do we need feasibility study? And the third one is, if we talk about feasibility specifically in transportation, so then what are the aspects and indicator and concept we will exactly look into that. And the third part is about preliminary investigation, and the fourth part is what are the different types of feasibility study. And also, if we from all those aspect till types, then we will jump into the specifically what are the objectives and what are the components. And then at the end of a lecture, there are few slides included in the lecture. So for example, because you have to write feasibility of any of your project you have worked so far, and at the end of a lecture I will also give you assignment as well. Okay, so then you can work on that. On the we talk about the key factor. So what we are actually dealing with, we are trying to deal with what are the facts, assumption in financial data. So in that very specific slide we are talking about that, to how we can collect the correct data, how we can collect the correct assumption, and how we can come up with a financial data. As Azaz and Wasim both mentioned the two very similar word, cost, financial viability. What does it mean? It means that in every project, uh, we have a very bad luck in Pakistan that we never plan for people. We plan people to use our planning. So this is very, very dramatic situation in Pakistan, kind of quite astonishing, which is quite discouraging as well, because when you don't need the people need, if you make something of yourself from your own idea, that will actually not work. So the most important part around the world which is considered is how much the project is financially viable. In every company, administration, municipality, government, state, province, they should more focus on the feasibility, because they can get the correct information, they can get the correct assumption, they can also get the financial viability data as well. Because the very important thing in every project is, a civil engineer, you need to understand the return. So for example, around the world, there are two types of a project. The very number one is a subsidized one. The second one, such as if we talk about North Korea or like China, where each and everything is owned by the state. And then third one, that state invest and bring the investor from outside, and then they come up with the triple P, public private partnership program. And then at the end, for example, they come up with it after 3 or 4 or like 5 years, you can get the whole money and you will get your own return, and after that the state can own benefit from the same project. So this is very important. And also, uh, in the last slide there is two assignment. The purpose of this assignment is to understand the factors that why every project in Pakistan is not financially viable. Simple financial viability, if someone asks me, is ask, can you elaborate how we can evaluate if the project is viable or not? Is that Wasim, anyone?
Sir, maybe we do not consider all the factors of the project which we consider is a viable. For example, if we take a big topographic area and we cannot cover it, then how we will do a proper study and consider it as a viable project?
Now I'm just saying that how we can conclude it that this specific project is financially viable or not. So what are the elements if we only see in the economic viability? Do you know any of 2 or 3 indicators? As I already explained as well. Wasim, you? Do you want to comment on that?
Sir, the first thing which is very important in the transportation in the railway projects, the main thing is passengers, sir. If we have a passenger that which are using the railway, so on that purpose we calculated the economic ratio, that this project will be viable or not viable due to business point of view, that we can on the feasibility stages we can collect the different surveys, which is household surveys and survey based on the community, that where we can collect the data, and then we analyze the data that this project is viable or not viable. So then come to the point about the economically is viable or not viable. So all these parameters is checked during the feasibility stage itself.
Okay, so you want to say that if we do a correct collection of ground data and also the correct collection of the need. For example, if you provide a service, as I already give you example of a Washington DC, as I believe there is almost 3 kilometers of a one station between Pentagon and the next station. So what they
Gee.
did, because a lot of people would like to see Pentagon from the aerial view, because very few people can enter there. It's quite secure spot. So there was a very huge passenger attraction, and then what Washington DC government or like province did, that they install a very comfortable chair, sofa, etc., because what they believe that a lot of foreigner, if they want to come, so that will give them a very kind of uh, aesthetic, a very attractive approach, and then which will quite impress them. But what happened actually at the end of a day, by shifting or like providing the very comfortable seats, and they elevate the fare price quite high, almost 3 to 4 times. So like you need to pay 7 to 8 or like $9 only for like 3 kilometer. So what happened? Okay, for the attraction, it's okay, but for the people who are using the same commute on a regular basis, was not viable for them. So a lot of people start moving through buses instead of a railway. And then what happened? They have actually changed the same thing again, because they already lost a lot of passenger. So when we talk about financial viability means when you invest 100 rupee, so the very first thing is in how much time you can get your own 100, and then what will be your yearly profit percentage. I hope now it's clear, right? So moving to the next slide, the very amazing and very important question is that why do we need feasibility? If we talk about any project, that the same project need to move or like process through a lot of, there are two ways usually. One we call the communal level planning, and then the top one we call the federal level planning. So the difference is the communal level planning means from the local municipality a demand is generated, and then the same demand is actually evaluated or analyzed by the same municipality, and then the same demand sent it to the federal level, and then federal see it. If it's come in a very greater vision and mission, then they provide a funds. But this is now responsibility of a communal level of a community development or municipality, which we call usually in Pakistan TMS, Tehsil Municipality, right? So this is now their responsibility to evaluate and analyze the feasibility of each and every project. Okay, so when we talk about the countless feasibility means the very specific term. Countless feasibility means if we talk about, if we send so many experts in the field to collect data from the field, what will happen? A very amazing thing will happen, because you can get a lot of correct data. Okay, for example, if I give a same task to like 3 or 4 different people, go to the field, collect the data. So almost 60 to 70% data will be similar, but the way of each and every person perception thinking is quite different. So we, at the end of a day, there is a one methodology which we called multi-criteria decision making in. So you can put the whole data in an Excel sheet, and then you can get the most common factor and then again the most unique factor, and then we can end up with an end result. But the only purpose is so that how we can get the most correct information. That's it. The second part is about, as I mentioned earlier, is most of the project fails because we assume that data is correct or not correct. Keep in mind there is no place of a judgment, of a assumption, or to use the philosophical approach in a real research or engineering projects, because we cannot assume things here. There should be proper evidence before to reach to any decision. That thing should be quite clear. So if we talk about feasibility specifically in transportation, so feasibility study is performed in most of the transportation project for the purposes to reach to the actual situation before to taking any type of a decision. For example, most of the companies and their investor. So there are two bodies. One are the companies, and the second one is a investor, and the third party is a state government. So both of them, if they are not on the same page, there will be issues, because company is are responsible to deliver a project, and every investor he will make sure through company's expert if the project is feasible or not. And if you if the company provide a report which have a lot of missing information, then in the very long run there will be capital investment issues, as well as there will be the project will not sustain or remain for a very longer time. When we talk about feasibility study, that should include uh, every type of data, such as what are the market opportunity. So you have to keep in mind all the market indicators, factors, opportunities, weaknesses, as well as you also need to consider the risk factor. You also need to consider the strength and weaknesses. Actually, here we are mainly talking about SWOT analysis, SWOT, SWOT, strength, weaknesses, and then what are the threats. Okay, through SWOT analysis we can get the idea from the market, from the project, and also we can satisfy both investor as well as the state as well. Okay, and if I give you the example on the very second point, recently at the time of Imran Khan, when the Islamabad metro was closed due to financial crisis, so when the new setup came, they just resumed the same project again. So now God knows, if the project was not viable, then why the new setup directly start the same project. So as I mentioned earlier, that we never plan for the people, we only do it for a political scoring or something like that. So the same thing can always happen in a state if you don't have a coordinated community level planning along with a province level, and then at the top at a federal level. So such type of miseries, accident can happen and will again and again happen. Okay, so you have to bear with the state. Sometime you will also provide your feasibility study, and then the state may reject it straight away. It's not because that your report is not conclusive. It may be there is some another scene is going around the screen. When we see to the feasibility study, each and everyone see it at a 45-degree angle. Investors see it as a business plan. Companies see it as their own marginal and their own profit scale. And the state, of course, if they don't have their own resources, their own money, Of course, they usually monitor, evaluated the same project, that how we can facilitate people. But it is for the investor, it's a business plan. For the company, it's a profit, the same, of course, business as well. And for the state, they only want to facilitate the people. Any questions so far?
Sir, I have a question.
Please.
Sir, is there any factor which we consider useless to be a part of a feasibility later on? For example, if we take a BRT, we are studying on some economic factor, and we consider what kind of gender or what kind of class of people is traveling. Does this matter?
Look, always whenever you need to plan for the middle and for the average class people. You should keep this point always in your mind, because the elite, they will never use a public facility, public transportation, public project, because they will always move in their own vehicle. There is a one strategy which we call push, pull, and improve. You can search it. It was firstly generated from Germany almost in 1980s. That means that how you can push the elite class. Elite class means those people who have their car ownership, who have their own car. How you can push them and pull them where? In the local public transport. But now the question is, if you want to improve the local public transport, you cannot elevate the standard very high so that the middle and average people cannot afford it. But for example, if you plan, as I already give you example of Washington DC, if you plan only for a specific group of people, which may be 3 or 4 or 5%, again your planning will not work, because there is a huge probability that this 3 or 4% may be declined. But again, if you look to the running expenses, the same 3% will not may use your facility. So always, as you mention about gender, of course there is a possibility, like, look, you need to understand two things. In Pakistan and again in the Muslim society, we have a lot of norms, such as cultural norms, religious norms. You cannot ignore those issues. If I give you example of a BRT, if you read my article which was published in a newspaper, there I say that, for example, if you just take example of a pedestrian way, there is very limited space in the stair, that the female and boys and like male and female, they cannot even cross. So there is a 30 to 40% probability that their shoulder, their foot maybe collide with each other. But in the world, maybe this is not a problem, but in a Muslim country, especially in Pakistan, this is a very huge issue. So you cannot ignore those issues. Every feasibility study will be successful if you consider the cultural, the local, the religious norms, and put all those mixture in your feasibility. Then you can reach to the conclusion. As you mentioned, of course, this is a very huge factor. For example, if we provide a Peshawar BRT where males and females, they can sit together without any restriction. First of all, I will not allow my family to even travel in a BRT. You can think, will you allow your sister, mother, or like your wife? Of course not, right? So of course this is very huge factor. Every good planning is, there is very rare issues in a BRT operation, but there are huge blunders at the planning stage. This is what I do believe. Maybe I am wrong, but this is again my own concern. And there is a saying that every person is a title to his own word. So I'm just title to my own queries and concern about BRT planning. Is that? Are you with me?
Yes,
Wasim,
sir.
Izaz? I hope that
Yes,
I
sir.
just briefly answer to your question, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Wasim, do you want to add something?
Yes, sir. But I understand, sir, about the planning that the in the pre-designing of the BRT during the construction, the planning is a very important role. And still, in this regarding, we are starting the BRT Phase 2 project in Peshawar on Khyber Road, which is total length is 12 kilometer. So we are in this stage. We are going to planning all these the parameters, checking and hiring the consultant to provide the feasibility of the BRT Phase 2.
This is very impressive, and I'm quite sure if you are in the team, you can give them your own valuable inputs as well. Keep in mind one thing: whatever you learn in your life, if you cannot apply it wherever you are working, so that means that the things you have learned so far are not kind of a productive. So try to apply those in a very real project, so then you can, there is always a place for improvement, there is always a place for learning. So if you miss any spot in a feasibility with
Right, sir.
practical exercise, you can enhance your own skills, your knowledge, and of course in the very next project you can come up again with a very conclusive feasibility report. Okay.
Inshallah, sir.
Okay, so I'm just putting a little bit slides so that you can get idea that what is feasibility so far and why do actually we need feasibility. So the second part is about preliminary investigation. Okay, do you have any idea that why we do preliminary investigation? Anyone? Wasim, Azaz, Nagar, anyone?
So preliminary investigations is a very important for the project, the subject project. We checking the cost, we checking the land, we checking the alignment of the road or alignment of the track, we checking the population of the area. So in all these things, the designs that is this design in this stage is good or not good, if we will improve or not improve.
Azaz, would you like to add to that? Azaz, okay. Basically, preliminary investigation is a initial stage. For example, whenever there is a crime happen, so
Sir,
we
I
first
have
of
an
all go to.
internet issue. I can't hear something. I have a internet issue. There is no
Okay,
electricity here.
okay. Azaz, you can listen to the recording again. Okay, no worries. Okay.
That's
So
why I
the
didn't hear the question, sir.
okay, okay. So the question is, would you like to comment something on a preliminary design? This is the question. Preliminary, which is basically a part of a feasibility study where we do both things together. Nizaz, are you with me?
Yes, sir. Preliminary study, sir. We basically investigate what factors, what stakeholders we will be considering in our EIA.
Okay, so preliminary design. So like as I mentioned earlier, whenever there is a crime happens somewhere, so first of all we go to the any police station and then we file FIR. So like FIR basically means that this is the very first investigation report. Preliminary is basically FIR for a feasibility study, where we actually provide the information before to write something or before to go to any type of a real project in the very field. Okay, so if we talk about preliminary, it's the preliminary have objective through which we would like to see if the same project is what type of vision it have and what are the scope of the same proposal, and then what is the client core business proposal from the investor. So you need to see three things. Number one, what is the proposal? So like what you want to build, number one. The second is how much investor is interested in what. For example, if we build a BRT or like any of the line and the same investor is interested in only one condition, which is that if your feasibility and alignment is passing through specific location, then I can put my money in them. So again, there is an approval with demand. So this is again very risky. So if you are a feasibility engineer, or if you are a feasibility report writer, so you have to keep in mind that how you can bring the investor, the state interest, the investor interest, the company interest to the very one table. Because maybe investor is a builder, he already developed a very big kind of a township something, and he want to connect the same thing through that public transportation. Its example is Peshawar Canal Road. If you remember, there is a probability that PRT may be extended up to Rigi town, which will also cover Peshawar DHA as well. So that means that the Peshawar Development Authority, along with DHA, they both are interested in what? To connect their township to the public transportation. But if we take example of other township which are already existed in the same road, such as Police Colony or some other places, okay? So you can imagine maybe there is some type of a very pre-defined approach that in future such thing will happen. So preliminary design is a design where we come up with a very initial kind of a planning where you actually want to build a facility for a proposal, but you want to see that how you can put the benefits of the state, the benefits of the client, the benefits of the investor in a same project. If we talk about the short term or like long term vision and mission, so you have to keep in mind that what are the facilities and services you need to provide, which should be the part of a broader plan. For example, if we want to build a township, and then in the same township you just made the same township through car centric, so could you imagine that each and every person in Pakistan or maybe in the same region is not able to buy or have a car? So your township have a very rare chances of a boost or like of a development. So you can always see the like through BRT accessibility and mobility in Hyderabad, a lot of people actually move to Hyderabad, although the 5 marla cost rent in Hyderabad of a single portion is around 30,000. But if they are living in a city, maybe for the 5 marla again they need to pay 20,000, at least 15 to like 20,000 within the city. So like they are again paying more rent, but still they are living in Hyderabad because it's mobile. It provides a mobility to actually to them. So in your project, you have to keep in mind the vision, mission in a short term. Actually, you need to define short term and long term goals in terms of a vision and mission. Okay, to extend your corporation within these 3 to 4 interested bodies, okay, such as client, state, company, and investor. Okay, and also you need to understand that what will be the operating cost, funding cost, and of course what will be your key, which we call KPI, key performance indicator. For example, for every project we generate a KPI. The purpose of KPI is that how much you have successfully did your homework, did your exercise, and how much you have achieved the said task in your at your planning stage. For example, most of the township they usually said that we will provide X, Y, Z. So at the time of their opening, they make a lot of promises, but they hardly and rarely fulfill their 50% of the promises because each and everyone is behind the planning, behind the money. As I already mentioned before, that this is a very bad luck of the planners within the country, the development, the developer within the country, because we never plan for the people. We use the project and then tell the people to use my planning, my project, and then we try to mold them in the political scoring project. So this is the end of today's session. I hope you have understand in the next slide. In the next session, inshallah, we will start from the different types of feasibility, where we will see if the project is technically, economically, and according to operation, if it's viable, not, or what are the parameters which we see actually in a technical aspect, in an economic, and then again in the operation. If anyone have any question, please let me know. Wasim, Mizaz, Nigar.
No,
So
sir.
politics is not any factor, right?
Look, if you are doing feasibility, for example, as already Wasim mentioned regarding railway network from Peshawar to Charsadda or like Mardan. So, look, you need to understand the investor approach or like parameter. If it's a project from the state, of course, setup matters. But if we talk about CPEC extension, so in such situation, if you have a foreign body